Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Sober is Dope podcast. I'm your host, Pop Buchanan, and today we have an extremely special guest. This woman has been changing the game. She touched me early in my process when I started being online, and I'm really affected by her message. We have Kaitie Degen on the line, the owner and CEO of Sober Saturdayz. Kaitie, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. I'm great. Super happy to be here. This has been a long time coming, and I'm stoked we got it organized, and here we are.
Here we are. So,
Yeah.
Kaitie, you're doing so much in the recovery community and you're so passionate. And that's the one thing
Yeah.
that always stood out to me. Can
Mhm.
you give us an idea of your origin story, where it all began for you, and how you found your recovery and where it all
Mhm.
started?
Yeah. So it's a big story. Yeah. So when I was little, I guess, how do I even begin this story? You know, when you just think about your life and you're like,
Yeah.
where do I begin? Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm 28 years old. I grew up in Kelowna, BC for some of my life. My mom had me when she was super young. So she was 15 when she had me, had my sister when she was 17. So she didn't really take care of us a lot when we were little. So I lived with my grandparents for a little bit. And then there was like a moment in time where my mom got married, and it was for 3 years. I'm just going to get into it. We're doing it. And yeah, so for those 3 years, me and my little sister, moved to Alberta, which is like another province in Canada, to live with my mom and her new husband. However, this guy was like super, super abusive, and it wasn't just like manipulation or verbal abuse. It was like super physical and like really, really intense. And I went from just like being a kid living with my grandparents to obviously being a parent and raising my siblings. So my mom has been addicted to drugs my entire life. She's also been an alcoholic for my entire life. And not just my mom. So like she's got two older brothers, and they're both have been in and out of rehab my entire life. And also her parents, sisters, kids, like everyone, like all of her cousins, they all party together. And so I grew up surrounded in addiction and just like with young, sick, mentally like ill people. And so I found, so I guess like living with my mom was really, really intense. My stepdad was super abusive and she wouldn't leave essentially. And so I kind of became the parent. I started like like having to make sure my siblings would get ready for school, like making their lunches, like making sure all this stuff happened. And then also just making sure that we were safe, because my stepdad, he would really abuse us. So like he would lock my sister and I in the basement, or like he would often try and commit suicide in front of us. And this was like something he did to almost, I think, to feel like we would care or something, to if we tried to stop him. And so like being children, like at this point in time, I'm in grade 2 and my siblings are all younger than me. So my mom's had two more kids with this guy. So there's 4 of us and I'm the adult, which is crazy.
Right.
And so he would do just like really intense things, like try and jump out of the vehicle while we were driving, or like threaten to jump off like the top story of our house with like my infant baby brothers. And like just really, really intense and fucked up shit, if I'm being honest. Like, and as a child, you don't really know what's happening to you. You're kind of just trying to be a kid. So like I would go to school and I wouldn't act like what was happening at home affected me, or at least I would think that I wasn't acting in that sense. But there was like a moment in time after 3 years of this sort of abuse where I was getting sick of it. And the police were over at our house every single weekend, and it was normal. It got to a point where they didn't take us seriously anymore. Like I remember when like the abuse first started happening, my mom would be like, go to the neighbors, and I would grab all my siblings and I would go to the neighbor's house. And like the first few times, you know, they let us in, and they let us use their phone and they let us call the police. But after this happening so often, everyone stopped answering us and everyone stopped taking us seriously. And as a child, when you start to notice this energy shift, even though your safety isn't being prioritized, you start to think of other ways to help yourself and your siblings. And so a lot of the time I would do things like when it snowed, I would shovel all the driveways in my neighborhood to make money. Then I would save that money and I would try and run away with my siblings. And like, obviously every time we got caught, I wasn't very tricky. I would wait till they were fighting and then I would try and like get lost. But so the way that I ended up, how I like to say, like saving me and my siblings was by, one time like the cops were over at our house and I gave them a tour of everything that used to be there, but was now broken. So like the problem with my stepdad is that he came from money. And so it was very easy to mask what was going on. And so yeah, I just like kind of gave him the police a tour of the house and everything that he had broken or like had once been there and wasn't anymore. And I remember my little sister being upset because she was like, you're not supposed to be showing them this stuff. You know what I mean? But I just knew in the depths of my being, even though I was only in like grade 3, that like I needed to show them this. And the next day we went to sleep that night at home after everything cooled down. And the next day, me and my sister went to school. My brothers stayed home. And that day at school, social services came and picked me up and picked my sister up. And they took us away to live with my grandparents in BC. We never got to see my brothers. We never got to grab any of the stuff from our house. We never got to say bye to our mom. We never got to talk to anyone about what had happened to us. We just were taken away. And it was really hard because like I knew that I had saved us from a situation. But the problem with my stepdad was that he was the parent of my brothers and he also had more money than my family did. And so he was able to keep my brothers. And so it separated all of us siblings, and me and my sister were with my grandparents and my siblings stayed with him. And this was really hard for me because I didn't understand how someone so evil could be a parent of children. Like I just didn't understand. And like, as a child, no one's really listening to you, even though you've gone through so many things that have made you mature faster than some adults do, you know, and you're just like trying to explain what's happening to you so you can get help and save your family, and no one listens. And so that was really hard. And my little sister really felt like I had kind of separated our family, that I had torn us apart, and she didn't really understand because she's 2 years younger than me at that time. Well, still now, obviously, but she was 2 years younger than me, even when I was in grade 3. So she doesn't understand what I was doing. And then there was a moment in time where like when we were living with my grandparents, and yeah, my grandparents were pretty much like, we can't afford both of you. And so I went into my first foster home at that time. Well, my first secure foster home. So like I stayed in this foster home for 4 years. Before that, I had been like in and out of like different respite situations, which is like pretty much if something happens and like you need to be taken away for like a night or 2, social services will take you away to like a foster parent, but only for a couple of nights. Doesn't really solve anything usually, and it just is a really uncomfortable situation for a child. But I've done it a lot. And so I went into my first foster home and I was so excited. But it was hard because my family, my like biological family, isn't well off, and my newer foster family had like a bigger house and like had some land outside of the city, and my family kind of just got pissed off at me and essentially stopped talking to me. And so I lost contact with them for a while as well, and my sister, and now I was just a part of this new family. However, this new family was amazing. She was like, well, for the most part, like I learned so much being there. However, my foster dad was also an alcoholic, and this wasn't really known until I was there. And also, as a child who comes from abuse, I didn't think it was weird. I didn't know it was bad. I didn't, it's normal to me. And so I would get phone calls in the morning while he was at work, and he was like, hey, like I have chugged a couple bottles of wine and I left the empty bottles downstairs. Would you mind like putting them in the recycling before anyone sees them? And for me, like I've never met my dad, my real biological dad. And so like to get this attention from my foster dad, and it was like this secret thing that him and I had, I was like, of course I will do that for you. Like whatever you need, like, thank you for trusting me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so like I lived there for a while, and like I'd signed so much paperwork as a child. I can't even tell you how much. But this one day I got some paperwork in front of me, and like I usually don't read anything, and I just had this inkling that I should read it. And they were essentially trying to adopt me without me really knowing. And not only that, but I was at this point in my life, I was so pissed off at not having control over my own body, not being like in control. Like I'd gone to a different school every single year of my life. Like I had never been anywhere long enough to set any roots. And so by this point I was like, I don't want to be adopted. Like, I want to fucking be 18 so I can get the fuck out of here and, you know, start my life.
Right.
And so I said no as a child, and I think I was in grade 7 or something. And I was like, I don't want to be adopted. I don't like, I know you guys are getting paid to keep me. Like, that makes me feel uncomfortable, you know, like, just like things like that. And so eventually that kind of changed how they felt towards me when I said no to that. And slowly things just kind of got worse with my foster dad's drinking. And like, there was never any abuse, like physically, like with my other stepdad, but it was just verbal. And he would get really drunk and try and like talk really like intense spiritual shit with me. And like, it was just really intense. And it was confusing for me because I had never had a dad. And then I had this version of a dad. But like, as a foster kid, you're only, the scary part about it is they only keep you when you're convenient. You know what I mean? Like, if you're being good and you're not opinionated, you know, and you don't talk back and whatever, it's like, okay, then we'll keep you, you know. But it's like, when I start to like have my own opinions or like speak up for something that bothers me, then it's like, oh, well, like, we could ship you off somewhere, you know. Like, not that they ever said anything like that, but like the energy that you get as a child, like, you're like, you know, it just feels weird. Like, you see the other kids that are like getting hugged and kissed, and like, you're just not. But so my grandparents ended up like taking me back in for a little bit, but because of their kids and their addiction issues, they couldn't afford to keep my sister and I again. And so they essentially told us that we were going to a respite for a couple of weeks while they like recuperated after something that had happened with their kids. And we moved into this new foster home, and this woman was different than the last in the sense that she would just have as many kids as possible and then not work and then use that money for herself. And she lived in a nice house. She looked nice. She dressed nice. There was no way you could tell anyone that she wasn't doing a good job. You know what I mean? And who's going to listen to the foster kids? Like, fucking no one. I'll tell you that much. Yeah. But so the thing that happened there was like, when you turn 18, the government doesn't pay your foster parents to keep you anymore. And so essentially on my 18th birthday, she was like, okay, you gotta go. And I was like, okay, sweet. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. But so pretty much I was taken away from my family in Alberta and transferred to another province, which is BC. And so technically the government of Alberta is my parent. Like, they've taken me and my sister in, and they're technically our parents. So when I turned 18, they had this rule back then where like the government of Alberta would pay for your schooling, any foster kid schooling. But you had to live in Alberta and you had to go to an Alberta school. So like literally when I turned 18, I just like got a ride to Alberta with like the clothes that I had and the stuff that I had. And I just moved there to apply for this program so I could go to school. And I was so excited to start my freaking life. And I get there and the lady's like, oh, your foster mom should have filled out this paperwork for you months ago. You have to wait till next year. And I was like, what do you mean till next year? I was like, I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have anywhere to live. I don't know anyone here. Like, I was counting on this money and on these programs to like set me up. And essentially I cried in this building, called social services, had to fight to find myself an advocate to get someone to help me start my freaking life. Because it was like, no one has taught me how to use a bank. Like, no one has taught me how to apply for university. No one has taught, like, no one in my school, my family has graduated. Like, I was the first person, you know? Right. So it was like, I was so excited. I'm like out in the world. And now I'm like, oh, I don't know anything, you know? Yeah. And I have no friends. Like, I've moved so much. I don't know what the frick is going on. So pretty much what happened was, when you live in BC, you have to be, the legal drinking age is 19, but the legal drinking age in Alberta is only 18. And so when I moved to Alberta, I was suddenly legal to drink. And like when I was in high school and stuff, like, I didn't care about sneaking into clubs. Like, I didn't like anyone I went to high school with. Like, I didn't give a fuck about partying with them. So like, it just wasn't a thing. Like, everyone always had fake IDs, and like, that just wasn't something I was into. But when I moved to BC, or when I moved to Alberta, I was like, I didn't know how to make friends, and I didn't know how to freaking socialize or where to meet people. So I was just like, well, I'm going to go to the club. So I found this one club that I liked, and I would just like dress up and I would go there, and it became kind of like a regular. And then people started noticing me there. So then they offered me a job. And then for 10 years, I worked in the bar and service industry. And so for those 10 years, that's how I made my friends. That's how I, finally was able to afford my first house, like my first place, like that's how I was able to like finally be able to have the clothes I've always wanted. Like the bars were like my catalyst to what I thought the life I always wanted was. Like what I knew about making friends and stuff in school wasn't, no one accepted me there. Like I couldn't dress the way I wanted to. I couldn't, talk about the things that I wanted. And one of like the things that I really liked about partying and drinking was like after parties, because like I would go there and I would drink and I would do like a crap ton of cocaine, and then we would talk, and like people would talk about everything that they never talk about, and like those are things that like I always talk about, but everyone else is always too uncomfortable to talk about. So like it became this really comfortable, almost therapy for me, where like anytime I had an idea or like I wanted to like share something with my friends, because my friends were always busy, and the only time you could be around them was after parties. And so it was like I would meet them at these after parties, and like I kind of became like I worked at a lot of like all of the bars and restaurants in Edmonton, and then I became friends with everyone who owned all of them, and then started like opening up different venues. And then I kind of became this person where anytime they would book talent or like a celebrity or whoever would come down to play, it was my job to make sure they had drugs and party favors and had a fun place to go. So like I was always known as being this person who like, if you wanted to know where the party was or you wanted to know where to get the best drugs, you came to me.
Right.
And I liked this because I thought these were my friends.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, I was the party friend. I thought like I didn't have friends growing up and I didn't have family. And so these people, friendship with me for them, or with them for me, was family. And like I was serious about those friendships. And then obviously at the beginning, like drinking was fun. We would like go houseboating. We would get freaking plastered, like just sleep with random people, do all this crazy shit that we all glamorized and we're all doing together. So it was totally fine. And we were wearing sparkles and it was all good. But the thing was, is like, I lived on my own. I would come home. I would be anxious as hell. I wouldn't be able to sleep. I would have to sleep in my bathroom because there's no windows in there. I would, it was just like awkward. No one saw that part. And then the thing was, is like, I was always that person where like, I would come home at 2 a.m. and I would get into bed, and then I would get a call from someone, and I would, as soon as I was pulling the covers in, I would fucking pull them right back up and get up and go. Right. Because I couldn't bear the thought of missing out on something that I was invited to, because I had spent so much time not being invited to anything. And so this fear of FOMO fueled my drinking. And the thing with my drinking and whatnot is like, I wouldn't say that I had a problem with drinking or that I was an alcoholic, because I never had alcohol in my house. Like I never drank at home alone. Not that that's what defines an alcoholic, but like for me, those things just, I didn't have those things. Like I drank to socialize, or I drank so I could do cocaine. And so for me, like I wasn't ever thinking that I needed to challenge my drinking. But what I started to notice in myself is when I was drinking, I was putting myself in these really dangerous situations. And like at first, these after parties were filled with my friends and like it was great. But at some point, my friends would want to go to bed, and not like I had no obligations. I have no fucking parents, like I have nothing. Like I make my money and I do what I want. Correct. And no one tells me anything because no one fucking cares to ask me how I'm doing. Realistically, like, I don't like, I'm not talking to any of my siblings at this point. Like I don't know. I'm just trying to make friends and start my life and forget about all of that. Like not even heal from that, just forget about it, Right. And so yeah, it went from obviously being fun and these being my friends to me realizing that like I would stay up for 3 days, like following these after parties. And like, they weren't fun after parties. Like they were after parties with people who really didn't care about what happened to me or anyone that was there. They were people who were also there to do drugs, and not to do drugs that were from a good source or to expand your mindset, like they were doing it also to escape. And like, then these became my friends and these became my situations. And I started noticing this, and I just started to feel gross. Like I was like, these people, the story of that I had convinced myself was happening, I was slowly starting to see wasn't true. And it was like a hard realization where I had to be like, why don't my friends call me during the day? Like, why don't they ask me how I'm doing? Like, I ask them, you know?
Right.
And it was because I was the party friend. And like, I literally didn't even realize that until like a month ago, where I was like, oh shit, I was the party friend. Like,
Yeah.
I had party friends that I think back and I'm like, oh my God, I can never be with those people because those are my party friends. And here I am being the fucking party friend, you know?
Yeah, I hear you. It was almost as if you was an extension of the club. Like they use you for thrills of recreation. Never had an idea that you're a human being that actually needed love and, you know, deserved to be treated like a real friend. So, you know, I used to have when I'm deep in my addiction, I had this brownstone when I got out of college in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. So I'm in Brooklyn, New York, in this real swanky spot.
Yeah.
Got this whole big building to myself. I'm young. I'm 25. I got 2 floors, a duplex. I'm the party guy. And that was kind of like the whole narrative. And that was the beginning and the end of where my whole addiction journey really spiraled out of control, because I started to realize extremely fast that a lot of people was using me. They was using me because I had this beautiful property. I was free spirited. I was a party guy. I had an addiction, so people could take advantage of me, you know. And then eventually, when I started losing control of myself, that's when my environment got out of control. It'll be days where I wake up and it'll be like, who's these people sleeping in the crib? And why is this person still here? And like, yo, homie, you've been here for 3 weeks. Are you trying to live here? And then eventually I lost control, and I lost a $1.5 million property, the career that came with it, and my self-respect, and my addiction spiraled out of control. And I learned the hard way that people will use you as much as they can and discard you. So I'm sorry that happened to you. So you're on this. So you said you realized a month prior that you was the party friend, right? So what was the catalyst, or what happened to get you from this party environment, the party scene, and being this person, this extension of the nightlife, into where you are now?
Well, so like a series of events happened. So like I never wanted to, my goal was never to be fully alcohol free. Like it wasn't my decision. Like I was like, I thought that I could get like a control of things. You know what I mean? Like I was never, and I'm the type of person where if I tell myself no, it's just going to make me want to do it more. Okay, so I had to outsmart myself. And I knew I didn't want to go to like AA or a program, because I'd seen my foster dad go through it. I'd seen all my family members go through it. And I was just like, I don't think that's the energy that is going to help me personally. And I also don't always relate to all sober people. So I was like, I really need to figure out, and I don't think that those sober programs and those sober things would be able to help my friends. Because the other thing too is like, I started to notice habits and consistencies within my friends that I noticed and saw within my family growing up. And so I started to get worried, because I was like, oh shit, like you guys aren't able to say no. Like you're getting really defensive over drugs, or like, you know, you're not following through with your goals, and you're not being the person that you say you want to be when you're high on cocaine, you know? Right. It's like, you're not doing the things that we talk about. And that was upsetting me. And I was like, I knew that someone had to do something, and it had to be completely different than how it had been done before in order to get into the scene and the service industry and the music scene that I wanted to approach, with people who didn't even know that they needed to work on their sobriety yet. You know what I mean? Right. I was like, I need to like inception the music scene, and I don't know how. And I'm not even at this point, I'm like not even crazy involved in like tons of that stuff, or even taken seriously in tons of that stuff. But I just knew that I needed to do something. And so it was funny, like the idea of Sober Saturdayz happened because I was just going to really uncomfortable after parties and then not happy with myself. But the decision to fully stop drinking after like trying to quit drinking and going and still working in the bars, and then like I had to like quit working there because I couldn't say no. And like the people that would come and visit me at the bars were like my regulars. I had seen them for 10 years. I had served them for 10 years, you know, like the Oilers would come in and they would pay me to drink with them, you know, like I'd be like, sorry guys, I'm not drinking. And they'd be like, here's $80 and we'll pay for as many shots as you want. And it's like, well, okay. You know, or like my drug dealer friends would come in and that was just known. You just give me a bag of cocaine when you come in and I say thank you and I pass on the word to all my friends, you know? Yeah. Like that. And so it got to a point where like they wouldn't listen when I was saying no. And I wasn't capable, I realized, of saying no more than 3 times. So I could say no 3 times, but when people realized that, they would just keep asking, you know, because like I was so fun when I was fucked up, you know, I would take my clothes off. I would like, you know, let people into my energy, and that's who they wanted to be around. But so one night, specifically when I had been working on my drinking pretty well, I ended up going out to, it was really funny. Like, so at this venue in Edmonton, I think like Shania Twain or something had come, but her entourage had come into the coffee shop that I was now working at. And I had like chatted with them, and they had asked me to meet them at this bar down the road. And so I was excited about it. I was like, this is cool. Ironically enough, there was like this cute guy there at the time. And so I was drinking, there was 3 of them. So I was drinking with these 2 girls that were with him. And then I offered him a shot and he was like, oh, I actually don't drink. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, I usually don't drink. And now I'm drinking right now. And I was like, but that's so dope that you don't drink. Like, I wish I wasn't drinking right now. Anyways, they end up leaving. I meet up with some of these like after party friends that I had, you know, been partying with for the last 10 years. They weren't my fucking friends. Like, we never talked unless it was like, hey, you're at the bar, you want a shot? Now you want to come do some drugs and go to this party. And I was like, yeah. I want to do all that stuff. But so anyways, this guy date raped me, and I knew it happened. And pretty much like he had been drinking this drink, and we were going to go to another location, and he told me to finish his drink. And I looked at him, but I partied with this guy a lot of times before. And so I did it. And as soon as I did it, I looked at him and I was like, that tasted really salty. And I had been date raped before, and I remembered the taste. And I walked out of the room to go to my shoes because we were going to leave as soon as we'd done that shot. And I don't remember the next 12 hours. Oh my God. And the things that happened to me during that, or that I am aware of, are really intense. And it really affected my life. And the hardest part about it was that afterwards, no one believed me because I was the party chick. And I knew everyone, and I knew this person. And the worst thing that happened was like, this guy, after I had been date raped, I was in the back of his car or whatever, and I had like peed my skirt in his car, and he got mad at me. And I don't remember any of this, but he dropped me off at another guy's house because he didn't want to deal with me. And he had told this guy some sort of story about how he was helping me because I had gotten too fucked up. And so I had like woken up after hours of this, and I didn't know where I was, but I didn't know how I had gotten there, but I was at a place where I used to party a lot. And so like, I thought I had just come here and partied and whatever. And so I woke up and there was other people there, and they're like, hey, how are you? Like, do you want some cocaine or something? And I was so out of it. So I just wanted to do some so I could like straighten up. And then when I did, we started like, he was like, yeah, like what happened to you? Like, he dropped you off. Like you had like soiled yourself essentially. And like, we had to, like, I changed you. He was like essentially like, what happened? And I couldn't remember anything. And like, as a lot of other things happened within that 24 hours. And then obviously I had to deal with all of that. And I had missed a day at work, and I had to tell my boss what happened. And the hard part about it was just like, I had reached out to my friends for support, and they didn't believe me. And the bars that I worked at didn't believe me. The people that I'd worked with didn't believe me. And they just thought that I was being irresponsible. And so I locked myself in my apartment for 5 months, essentially, with my dog. And I just I lived in a building with lots of my friends, and I was so embarrassed and ashamed that like I could hardly let my dog outside to go to the bathroom. Like I was just like fucking shit on my floor. Like I'm too scared to go out there because I'm so embarrassed that if I see someone, they're going to look at me a certain way, and it's going to put me into a panic. And so I felt like I couldn't be in this place that I had been in for 10 years. And all these people who I thought were my friends, they just like clearly were not. And so within that sobriety, I came into like all these really intense realizations. And I realized that like, one, I still wanted to party because I that's where I love creating events. I love socializing. Like I truly love doing those things. I love music, you know, I love dancing. Those things are therapeutic to me. I didn't want that to be taken away. And when I had tried to go back to the bar, it didn't feel the same and I didn't understand why. But so essentially, like I started planning alcohol-free events. And so the reasoning behind this was like, I talked to some of my, I had thought about like my mom and my uncles and stuff. And like, they had gone to rehab. Like my uncle's gone to rehab, like, I don't even know, like 15 times. And he's relapsed every single time. And I'm always thinking like, why the frick is that happening? Like a program that's supposed to help you and you can go to so many of them. And like, what is happening when you get out that's making all that progress go away? Yeah. And after hearing so many stories and whatnot, like what I realized is like, it's the integration back into society. Like there's so, like the stigma around sobriety was so weird that like all of the bars and restaurants I worked at didn't have any alcohol-free products. So like my family would go to meet their friends at places where they would hang out because they're just trying to be normal, you know, like everyone who gets sober is always trying to be just a normal person at first, you know, and they would go there and they would have like someone would offer them a drink, you know what I mean? And then the server would come back and offer them another drink, you know, and there's no alternatives, or you can drink orange juice and grenadine, you know, and everyone's gonna be like, why aren't you drinking? Why aren't you drinking? You know, and it just gets like, you're in the same association, you're in the same environment, you're in the same situations, and there's no support for sobriety. And so I just took it upon myself. I was like, I am going to find high-end alcohol-free products and I'm going to integrate them into all of these establishments so that when I go out, I don't have to be like, hey, can you make me a fake drink? And then if anyone asks me what I'm drinking, you know, I have to freaking come up with some sort of situation. It's right. And then the other thing too is like, who the fuck would want an alcohol-free gin, you know, when you're a partier? Like, why is that important? So I had to like create reason for it. And like, that's why I created Sober Saturdayz. It was like, I hold these wicked events that are sober and alcohol-free. I promote the products there. I get people hooked on them. You know, I get people hooked on the experience. Then I integrate those products into bars and restaurants so that people can go there and be normal and not feel triggered, or, you know, and that like the stigma around sobriety is changing because the conversation has changed so much since even I became sober curious in 2018, you know, like I can now go out somewhere and if I say I'm not drinking, people are like, oh, okay, what can I get you? But like when I first started, people were like, oh, like, are you pregnant? Like, are you on medication? Like, do you have a problem? And it's like, no to being pregnant, yes to medication. I don't know if I have a problem. Why are you asking me this on the middle of the dance floor? You know?
Right. Absolutely. And I'm really proud of the steps that you took and the steps that you're taking. I mean, I definitely want to go back. I'm sorry about the date rape situation. That sounds so horrific. And I thank you for your courage to talk about that, because so many women, you know, are dealing with these type of situations and they keep it to themselves. And we know that unprocessed emotions and just not even just speaking about it could be so therapeutic. And you know, you had a raw deal. You know, you grew up with this terrible stepfather. You was bounced around from house to house, you know, and from 18 to 28, you lived, you know, you went from being a ward of Alberta to a ward of the club scene, right, so to say, and kind of was raised and matured through that. And out of all of that, you produce something beautiful. You're producing something beautiful to make someone else's experience down the line a little bit more manageable. So you're super courageous for that. And I don't want to just pause over all of this, because this is where the value is, your strength, your resiliency, and your courage. And I get pissed when I hear this. You know, I want to beat someone up. I really want to physically beat someone up, and I can't. And the only way we could really get through this is by sharing the story, pushing through, and keep it and just bringing it to the fore. So thank you so much for that. And even for me, like my thing when I first got sober was the Old Dudes. Like I would drink Old Dudes, non-alcoholic beer, because one, I did like the taste of beer, but two, it still made me feel a little comfortable assimilating back into society. Like if I went out, I figured if I asked for non-alcoholic beer, it would be kind of like a cool social lubricant, so I didn't have to explain things too much.
Totally.
And we shouldn't have to explain things. Like sobriety should just be that. Like, I don't want to drink, right?
Yeah.
And excuse me. And the funny thing is that recently I don't even need that anymore. Like, I just go out and
Right.
I just drink coffee. Like, I don't like, oh, they be like, we have non-alcoholic beer. I'm like, I don't want non-alcoholic beer.
Yeah.
It's carbs and stuff, and it's gonna spike my blood sugar. I'm good. Like,
Totally.
do you have coffee? And I started making the experience kind of like a beautiful thing. When I go out, I'm like, let me see your drink menu. Let me get a Perrier with a coffee. Tell
Yeah.
me about your coffee. What type of milks you have. And then I'll make it about the food. But that comes a lot with experience, right? So we're kind of concerned with the person like your uncle who's just coming out of rehab or AA or whatever it is, assimilating back into society and then getting shell shocked, right? That's what kind of happens. You get shell shocked with the social pressure, and we don't necessarily have the skills. So you started Sober Saturdayz, and now I notice you have a sober drink called Daydream, right?
So Daydream,
Yeah.
I was really excited. So the way that my company was before COVID is completely different than what my company is now.
Okay.
Because obviously COVID changed a bunch of stuff. So at the beginning of COVID, I had 2 business partners, an accountant and a graphic designer.
Right.
And I had about 17 products on my roster. So my big thing was there's more now, but maybe 5 or less alcohol-free products in Canada. So there's 1 million in the UK, there's tons in the US, but they just over the last 2 years, more have sprung up, but there's just not a lot here. So my big thing is I wanted to import products that were not here yet. So I would order rose botanicals from Milan, Italy, and I would order 24 bottles, and there would only be 24 bottles in Canada, and you could only get them from me. So the other thing too is I'm a big festival goer. My partner's a DJ. He DJs at festivals in Canada, and he's also sober. But once I kind of stopped going to the clubs as much, and I started getting more involved in the festival scene and whatnot, because what I noticed was a lot of DJs and whatnot weren't getting booked because they weren't going to these after parties, and it was the opportunities weren't the same for the same people because they weren't drinking. And I don't know. I saw a lot of my DJ friends and my performer friends, and I just wanted them to be able to do it for a long time. And I hated the fact that that starving artist perspective, where you need to be broke and drunk or on drugs or something in order to create art or to be successful. And it's no, you can be so creative without being under the influence. I swear. But we have all been convinced that in order to be creative, you have to have these experiences or whatever. But so I don't really know where I was going with that. But within my first year of business, I was asked to be a part of the harm reduction panel for Base Coast, which is a music festival here in Canada. And to me, that was the biggest honor because I love this festival. It was a huge experience for me. And the thing too is I want to, my friends aren't I don't know, my friends aren't very basic. They're all dressed very colorfully. They all are musicians or artists or creatives, and they weren't necessarily thinking about sobriety. And so I knew if I wanted to introduce it to them, it had to be fucking cool. You know what I mean? I was what would I like? If someone was if I didn't decide I wanted to be sober and someone was trying to subtly convince me, what would that need to look like? And I looked at all the sober profiles and I was I get it. I was but I'm just not convinced, it doesn't seem fun enough. It doesn't seem exciting enough. The information that I need just isn't there. You know what I mean? I personally, I use plant medicines like cannabis and things like that for my anxiety. And it's helped so much because I've been able to get off my antidepressants and my anti-anxiety meds. And that's just something that works for me. But I also know reaching out to lots of other sober profiles, I just was not getting the support I needed or even being accepted. The energy was different. The way that I dressed, just people were just really didn't really get it. But in my friend group, obviously everyone gets me. And these are the types of people that I want to challenge anyway. So it's it's great to have all these sober profiles online and to have all these people online that are actively looking for sobriety. But I'm trying to get my friends who don't even really know it yet. You know what I mean? They don't know that they're binge drinking and going to festivals and going on these benders, because my friends go on benders, you know what I mean? And I need to show them that you can go to a festival and you can not drink and you can have a 10 out of 10 time. And I also need to believe that, you know what I mean? I have to create that. I have to believe that.
Right.
And so, yeah, that was kind of like my thing. It was like, I needed to convince myself that sobriety was freaking cool. And along the way of like trying to convince myself, I actually found that.
Yeah, and yo, that's crazy. You know, that's deep. And first, when I found your profile, I definitely was sold. Like, I think everything about you is cool. You have one of
Thank
the
you.
most beautiful, eclectic, artful, and colorful websites in the
Thank you.
movement, and
Thank
how
you.
you put everything together. And
Mhm.
I tell you this much, I'm definitely was a different person in my sobriety. Like, I
Mhm.
literally, and it doesn't bother me. What I would say is this: I had to be comfortable with accepting who I am now. I grew up.
Mhm.
I'm not in my 20s anymore. So a
Mhm.
lot of people look for the 20-year-old pop that was swinging from the chandelier, that's the
Totally.
rapper, that's the party guy and all of this stuff and real estate with the girls, and
Mhm.
I'm just like super chill now. Like, I go out and
Right?
I'm like, yo, where's the Dunkin' Donuts, man? And they're
Right?
like, yo, this guy. But the thing is, I really had to embrace that, and I had no example of how to make sobriety cool, but I just said I had to trust myself.
Totally.
So that's why I said sober is dope, because in our sobriety, we can still be dope. Like, we can still
Oh
be
yeah.
interesting. Partying can still be fun. And sober creativity. I did a podcast with my friend Martin John Garcia from
Yeah.
Recover Yourself, and we talked about the importance of creativity and breaking the
Yeah.
myth of creativity. Getting
Yeah.
permission from your drug of choice to be exciting or creative today,
Mhm.
having to check in with your drug to see if you're going to be able to write or be good.
Totally.
That whole false paradigm of the artist who has to be strung out and
Right?
creative and
Right.
deep and broke, that's
Yeah.
bullshit.
I
And
agree.
my thing was, I'm super creative now, and like you're super productive. You're doing all of
Yeah.
this stuff, and I think you had 100 people in your corporation, and it's
Me.
you,
It's just
right?
me.
It's
Yeah.
just you, and so that's a testament. And that, hey, we're breaking the myths one day at a time. So you brought your friends in now. How did your friends respond? Did it what's the conversion like? Were you able to convert at least one person over to the recovery, the way you showed them it being cool and stuff?
So like in Alberta, where I
Right.
first was, this is like a more conservative province. And so
Okay.
like I'm telling you, my first event hit I was on the front page of the paper. I wrote for universities across Canada. Like, people were like, one Canadian woman holds a party without alcohol. How will she do it? Like, people were bewildered. And like
Wow.
all my friends who held events started sending me messages being like, there's no way this is going to work. We've been holding events for years. Like, people aren't going to pay tickets for an alcohol-free event. Like, I was like, okay, first of all, it's because your guys' events, you're counting on people to be drunk. So you just need a dark venue. Everyone's going to get fucked up. You don't have to worry about it. When sober people come to an event, everyone's attentive, so like you need to create experiences for them. So it was
Right.
like, I was like, I'm not doing what you're doing. I'm not just finding like some venue, some bar that you play at every fucking weekend for the last 10 years, to go to the same place with the same music at the same DJ. Like, I'm creating weird experiences so that adults can feel silly while being sober so that we can get over the awkwardness. So like I would hold like really funny parties, like midnight tea parties for adults with magicians at it. And I like funny shit. And like those, like that event sold out, which was really funny. But pretty much like my friends they were all still like partying, right? Like, so they were mad at me because the fact that I looked at my drinking and my like my addictions and how my habits, and I was saying I had a problem, and they were all doing it just as much or even more as me because they didn't, by that point I wasn't getting invited to everything. That meant that they must have some sort of issues as well, right? And so I stopped getting invited to things. Um, I yeah, I pretty much, all the support that I thought I was going to get from my friends, I didn't. Those aren't the people who came to my events. Those aren't the people who were interested in the things I was doing. And that really hurt my feelings, obviously, because I am such a support. Like, if you're my friend, like I will fucking go to every single one of your events. Like, I will promote the shit out of it. Like, I'm serious about friendship. You know what I mean? Like, it's important to me. I don't have my family. Like, I'm going to be your fucking friend.
Right.
And so when that wasn't reciprocated, I was confused because their words weren't matching their actions. And I had to have a lot of internal moments where I was like, okay, maybe these weren't my friends. That really hurts. That's really upsetting. It doesn't mean I can't make new friends. I also need to decide if I'm going to keep staying here and justifying what I'm doing to these people, or am I going to go and find my people, And So that's when like I met my new partner, who is also sober now. And we moved to BC, which is just like a much more health conscious, colorful, summery place. And since coming here, it's been so different. And all of the artists that like we work with or that we've partied with in the past, especially over COVID, have all started challenging their drinking. And it's been the most rewarding and also just relieving thing to see that it's like actually starting to wear off, because I really had to come to terms with the fact that just because I'm a sober profile and I am promoting something healthy and well, and I genuinely know it's going to help people, it doesn't mean it's what they want to hear. And it doesn't mean that they're going to respond well. So like my family fucking hates that I'm sober because none of them are sober and they like not being sober. And now they feel uncomfortable around me. And so it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's just, yeah.
It's a good, well, this is the good thing though. Believe it or not, the people who's throwing the shade, the people who's a little uncomfortable, maybe a little apprehensive to be around you, the deep down, your strength and your transformation is going to be something that's going to help them in the future. Because sometimes we think they're not paying attention. I have a friend who told me straight up, you're not a real man, you weak. Real men drink and all of that. And this was early in my recovery. I was so mad just because I couldn't get to him over the phone. And I started crying. I was pissed, and I was so early. It was just like my 3rd month in recovery. And I'm like, why are you giving me this hard time? Yeah. But I know that those are the same people who they recognize it. My sister told me one time, she said, you know what, Pop, you may not realize that people are watching you. You may think people are judging you, but people are paying attention and you're helping people. And I have people that come to me now and say, yo, you know what, man, that sober is dope thing is strong. I was thinking about it. Can you help me? Right. So believe it or not, when your family's ready and they're going to get to a point, God willing, we all get to a point where we need to shift. You're going to be there. Right. And so are your friends. So don't think it's falling on deaf ears because you're changing the narrative. And that's what's important. Because trust me, my friends is like, I know sober is dope. And we get it. We get the point. We're still going out tonight. And that's why I always say we have a live and let live approach to sobriety, because I want people to be able to have fun. But if you can't do it responsibly, then you need to reevaluate why you're drinking. If you're using it to cope, if there's a coping mechanism, it's a negative coping mechanism for something that you're not treating. Let me ask you this. Did you ever go to therapy for anything? Did you ever have to how did you deal with a lot of the trauma from your past, and especially now being quote unquote in sobriety?
So it's a constant thing to work on. Like I have been working on myself since I was little. So pretty much like when I was little, I noticed the state that my family was in. And I knew that the only way I was going to get any better is if I educated myself. So like at a very young age, I became super obsessed with self-help books, and I would just read everything and about like manifesting and energy and all that jazz too. Like I went to yoga teacher trainings. I went to Nicaragua for a few months. I've done a bunch of different trainings to work on my body and my, because like after I quit drinking, I realized I had fibromyalgia and I was drinking to mask my pain. And so that was something I had to work through.
Okay. That's important.
Yeah. But then, so I just like, what did I just say? I forgot.
That you went to Nicaragua, you was doing different things to mask the pain.
Yeah, and so then I went to school for acupuncture and Chinese medicine.
Oh, so, wow.
Yeah. So like I was like just like on this like essentially like I was on this mission to heal my family. I was like, I'm gonna educate myself so that I can help them, because these programs aren't helping them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the funny thing was like I learned all of this stuff so I could help my family, but my family's like, nah, like we don't want to be helped. Like we're good. You know what I mean? And so it was really hard because for a long time I tried to help them and it was bad for me. And that also was contributed to my drinking. And so, I had to create boundaries within my family too, within my sobriety. That has really helped. Like I haven't talked to my mom in 2 years, which is very hard. And she's very, very intense still. Like I have her blocked on lots of different things. And she still will try and call me like 16 times a day. And she's just not well. So it makes me feel really horrible. Like she'll go from being like, hi, how are you? To be like, you're a fucking bitch. And you're just like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And so like having to grow strong enough to have boundaries and to
Right.
not let anyone make you stray from them, because people will be like, oh, like your mom's not well, you know what I mean, like you need to like be there for her, or like, you know what, and like no one knows your situations, you know, like no one knows
Yeah.
the shit that you go through with your addicted family, and people can try and tell you how to go about it, but like you have to put yourself first. And like the more I tried to help them, the worse I got. And so like the reason why I'm in such a good place right now was because I listened to the fact that they weren't ready to heal. And instead, I took everything I learned and what I was doing, and I found people who were ready to heal. And so now I'm almost helping them more because they get to see all of this people that I've helped and like how I've helped myself. And eventually they'll just have to catch on, you know?
Right. And look, protecting your personal space, having healthy boundaries, that is so essential. I tell everyone, look, if you're in recovery, you can't worry. Look, I will
Yeah.
totally cut someone off now. And
Yeah.
it
Oh,
took a
hands
long
down.
time because, again,
Yeah.
I'm like you. I was the center of attention. I'm the party guy. I'm the one that you would go to. People would lean on me. They'll put
Yeah.
all their baggage on me and then leave. And I'll
Yeah.
have to sit there and process it all. And now I'm like, look, if you're negative, I'm done. And
Yeah.
with that friend I was telling you about, he had 3 times. The third
Yeah.
time when he told me I wasn't a man and I started getting angry, I
Mm.
cut him off. That was successfully 7 years ago, and I never
Right.
looked back. I love
Mhm.
him. I prayed for him. I asked about
Yeah.
him, but I'm not going to sit there and let you dump your toxic
No,
energy on me,
totally.
especially while I'm in recovery, right? We're
Totally.
healing. We're healing. And you're
Yeah.
healing not just from the party scene and stuff like
Mhm.
that. You're healing from your childhood, from the
Mhm.
trauma and all of these things. And I really want you, Kaitie, make sure you just always protect yourself. Put your, it's
Mhm.
okay to say no. It's okay to be selfish if you have to. It's okay to sleep all day. It's okay to do whatever you need
Yeah.
to do to heal. And it's never too late to really go get therapy or talk about the
Mhm.
things that hurt you in the past and stuff,
Totally.
because you deserve that, you know?
Yeah, like I see a therapist now, and like we just got my partner on a therapist, and he hasn't seen a therapist like since he was little, so I'm really excited about
That's
that.
exciting. Tell us about, do you I think therapy is so important
Mhm.
and people always try to play it out.
Yeah.
It's so real. I love
Yeah.
therapy.
Me too. I always joke around. I'm like, everyone interesting has a therapist or 10, you know?
That's right. And that's why when you said it was certain people that come out like you with your uncle, when they come out and then they hit society and get shell shocked, it's
Mhm.
because they don't have the right things to fall back on.
Exactly.
When
Yeah.
I tell people, you come out of rehab or you come out some short-term detox, or
Mhm.
you go to a couple of AA meetings and you think you're healed,
Mhm.
just know when you come out, it's okay to go and get additional help, to go
Totally.
seek therapy and
I like
stuff like that.
recommend it 100%. And like, it's funny because there's like those memes where it's like people go to therapy to deal with their friends and family who don't go to therapy, you know?
Right, right, right,
And it's
right.
so true. But yeah,
And
like I love my therapist. Like yeah, it's interesting though, because like growing up in foster care, we had court orders to go to therapists. So like we were forced to
oh,
go to therapists and we weren't allowed to pick them. And
okay.
honestly, like when I was little, I just got good at telling them what they wanted to hear so I could get the fuck out of there, because I could tell that they were asking me, like they were all worked for social services. So they would all ask certain things to almost like coax you into a certain way of believing, because obviously they know that you come from a traumatic upbringing. And so they think they need to teach you a different way of thinking. But like
Wow.
I was such an independent person at a young age, and I was like, no, like no one's convincing me of anything here. Like I just need to get out in the real world and I'll figure it out. And so like
Right,
I would
right.
just like say like these things so I'd get out of the situation. And then so when I became an adult, I was kind of like grumpy at therapists for a while, because I was like, I had this really weird taste in my mouth about them. And I was like, no, they're not legit. You know what I mean? They're not actually trying to help you. They're trying to like coax you into a different way of thinking, that they were programmed by whatever program they went to, you know,
Right,
like some weird
right.
shit. But once I was able to pick my own therapist and pick someone younger and someone who like understood me and like lived in my city, you know, or like it was way different. And it's completely different when you can pick someone that you enjoy and that like you want to talk to, and you can, you know, swear around or like you know, be yourself
Be
around.
yourself. You could just
Yeah, it's
totally
like
be yourself.
totally. And like I noticed I needed therapy recently, like after moving here, because we've been here since January and I haven't had a therapist, because I started blabbing all my shit to everyone that was around, you know, like I was like, oh, you're my new friend. Do you want to hear about my childhood trauma? And it was like,
Right.
no one wants to hear about that. Like, not right now anyways, you know, it's like.
Yeah.
So like taking that responsibility and being like, okay, therapist time.
Yeah, definitely. But that going back to the childhood trauma, that's something that is so deep, and I'm glad you're working at it. You're working at it, and you're shining. So how are you doing now? How long have you been really actively dealing with sobriety?
Yeah, so I would say, and so in 2018 is when I first started like my sober curious journey. And so I
Okay.
quit drinking for like 5 months. And then I tried to go on a date without
Yeah.
drinking. So the first guy I went on a date with, it was totally fine. Or like I didn't drink, he did drink, and it was like awkward for him. He like didn't know how to be around me. So then I was like, then I felt weird, and I had like 6 months of sobriety under my belt. So the next date I went on, I was like, well, maybe I can have one or two, you know? And that went into 3 months of binge drinking with this dude. And then obviously I had to be like, whoa, what the fuck am I doing? Like, you know? And so when that happened, like I noticed my habits were getting worse again. And so I started, like at first, like I started just challenging myself, because I'm not the type of person who can just stop something right away. Or like, I wanted to, I don't know. I wanted like, for me, even now, I like to think of anytime someone asks me if I have a drink, I still think of it as a choice. Like I find empowerment by saying no. So like, I don't say I can't drink, or like I'm sober, so I don't drink. I'm like, no, I don't want that. You know what I mean? Like, for me, that's like empowering to me.
It
and like,
is.
yeah. And so like when I find people who are like, feel like they have no power over alcohol, like I feel bad for them, because I'm just like, the only reason that I can stay sober is because like I genuinely want to be, you know what I mean? Like I've convinced myself, like I wasn't told to be sober. I wasn't given all these rules on how I needed to be sober. It was like, I chose. And anytime someone asks me, I say no. And that it like fills me up even more. You know what I mean?
I
Sorry.
love that. That's a whole new way of thinking. That's a whole new way of thinking. It's because we're trained to say we're powerless. Well, we say we're powerless over the addiction, but you do have power over the alcohol. You can't say it's empowering to say no, I don't want that. It's a different command, and it's giving you some power and giving you control of the narrative. I like that, for framing it that way. It's a different way to frame it. That's so awesome. That's so awesome. So you're doing all of these things, and you're thriving. And how did you, now I was interested to ask you this, how did you create Daydream, starting a beverage company? How can, for the sober entrepreneurs or the entrepreneurs out there, what advice, like if I wanted to start a beverage company, what do I do? How do one go about doing that?
Okay, so first of all, Daydream is a product that I use with another Canadian.
Okay.
So essentially what happened was, before COVID, I had a list of 17 different products that I was importing into Canada, which was awesome because I was the only one doing that. However, as one small person, importing these products is really freaking expensive. Like you need to do it on ship or by plane. And since it's not alcohol, it freezes. And so you need to have heated ways of traveling it into Canada. And I learned this the hard way by obviously using a not heated truck one time, and a bunch of shit blew up. Which sucked because I don't have anyone to give me more money for something. And so I lost all of that. But so pretty much like what I wanted to do is I wanted to run an alcohol-free liquor store, essentially. Like I wanted, because like, it's great that like alcohol-free products are in liquor stores, but if you're an alcoholic, you don't want to go into a freaking liquor store to get your alcohol-free liquor. You know what I mean? Like you need a space to go that's for you, that's your own experience, that's not triggering you or like putting you in an environment where you could slip up, you know? So essentially I wanted to open like an alcohol-free liquor store. My idea caught fire right away. I found all of these like incredible products within my first year. I was doing these big festivals. Like just before COVID happened, I found an investor. We built this new website. We had all of these things happening. We were going to, obviously before COVID and all this like Amazon shit happened, we were going to send our products to Amazon. So essentially like if you ordered off my website, they would fulfill the orders, and then I would just send more product to Amazon. And so like essentially, because what was happening was I was ordering product to my house, and then my house became a liquor store or an alcohol-free liquor store, you know what I mean? And then my problem that I was having was like, well, how the frick, now that I've got this all here, now I need to like separate it out of this packaging, put it in new packaging, and then somehow create affordable shipping with this heavy weighted stuff. So it was like all of these, excuse me, all of these like constant problems are coming up. But so anyways, I found an investor, which I was so excited about because I had someone else who was going to invest before, and he bailed last minute and totally fucked me over. different story.
Right.
But so this guy invested some money and I was really excited. We had finally had all the products, like everything was getting worked out. Then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I don't even know how to explain this. He decided he didn't want to be a part of things anymore because it was too sketchy for him, which is fine. But instead of like going through the contract or like working with the company on how to like pay him back on this investment, he just drained the company bank accounts, which is totally illegal. And so at the beginning, so at the beginning of COVID, I went from like having this amazing team, all this work I've done, like finally trusting someone to share my company with, you know what I mean? I just filed a shareholders agreement. Like we were like a federal company incorporated, like I was, it was happening, you know, like I moved to the city, I wanted it to happen. The people here wanted the drinks, all the establishments were ready. I just had to start. And then, he stole all the money and it was like, okay, what do I do now? So like, obviously I called the lawyers, try and work through the shareholders agreement. Like over the last few months, it's been this big legal battle that I'm finally getting to the bottom to now. So essentially like what had happened is like, when COVID hit, we couldn't import things into Canada anymore because no one was working and no one could ship that stuff. And you know, where was it gonna go? Amazon wasn't accepting new products anymore because they were short staffed. And so we were like, okay, well, maybe we could find a Canadian product that we could have, you know, something that's different than anything else. And at this point in my sober journey too, I kind of realized like I don't really drink alcohol-free products anymore. You know what I mean? Like you were saying, it was like, I went from being like, okay, like, yeah, I need a fake gin and tonic because like, I need that right now. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've gotten through that. I'm like, I don't even care about that anymore. Really. Like personally, I don't even really care about that anymore. Like I used to have like a bar cart in my house that was like filled with products and like, but like, I wasn't the type of drinker who would come home and make myself a cocktail that had 10 ingredients in it, you know, like I didn't do that. Like I took shots because I didn't want to get fat. You know what I mean? Like I chugged things. Like that's what I did. I would take ice out of cups and just fucking pound it. Like that's how I drank.
Yeah, correct.
And so I had this realization that I was like doing all this work for all this product and I wasn't even passionate about it anymore.
Right.
And so I had to like sit down and be like, okay, the company that I had built for the last year and a half is kind of dying or changing. And I'm like, who am I in my sobriety now? And like, what do I want to do moving forward? And so I started looking online for different products in Canada that I could source. And I ended up stumbling across this product, which is Daydream. So Daydream is just such a cool story and product. And that's why I love it so much. But obviously the branding is like incredibly beautiful and cute. And I don't know.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
It's so good. But so like as a student of Chinese medicine and like acupuncture, like obviously like I take a lot of like herbs and tinctures and like I use a lot of essential oils and I do all this stuff. And so when I found this product, it's really cool because it's got ingredients like ginseng, moringa, shishandra, like all of these things that make you feel good. And like my idea was like, oh my God, can you imagine going to a bar and feeling better than when you got there? Like, you know, like how would that work? So,
that's awesome.
So I like reached out to this guy. So I do business a little bit differently than other people, I think. And I've learned this because like, for me, I wanted to be friends with the people that own these products and created them. Like I wanted to know them. Like I wanted to know their story. I wanted to see how they built it. And so like, I don't know if you know products like Kalino or Seedlip or like products like that. But like I talked to Ellie Kalino is like a tropical gin made in Colombia. And it's made out of like Inca berries and like really, really delicious things. But I found her Instagram when she had like 10 followers and I was like, whoa, what are you doing? Like, tell me, how can I support you? Like, and I started getting like, people essentially to like send me bottles and I would do these live interviews of like what they were making and like whatever. And so I became friends with these people. So like anyone that I do business with, it's really awesome because I can text them directly and just be like, hey, what's up? Like, would you mind could you send me these graphics or like whatever? Like, I don't have to go through anyone. Like everyone that I've worked with, they're my friends.
Right.
And like, I don't write my business emails professionally or anything because I don't want to run business like that. Like, I don't want to be getting those emails. Like, I want someone to be like, hey, Kaitie, like, blah, 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 blah. And I'll be like, yeah, of course. Like, don't worry about everything structurally there because that's not important to business for me. Like being creative and doing whatever else, like that's what we should focus on. Like, I don't give a fuck if you didn't sign that properly. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, let's not focus on the egotistical side of business, you know?
Yeah.
And so when I found Daydream, I was stoked. So it's like this guy named Alex, he's from Toronto. So essentially he is going to university and they decided as like a school that they were going to create a product and all the students were going to get involved. So they wanted a health conscious product that used hemp adaptogens in it. So essentially, like in the cannabis product, there's like the psychoactive part of it. There's like the CBD part of it, which is non-psychoactive. Then there's also like hemp adaptogens, which are just like, they're just good for you, but they're not going to give you any effects like either of those parts of the plant. It's like it's just completely different. But so essentially, this guy flew down to Vancouver. He met up with me. And I met up with his friend and he told me like the whole process. So like the school made the website, like all of the students worked together to create this product. And he was just in Toronto and I was like, dude, like I could fucking sell this product. Like this product is my jam. Like I can be a rep for this product. Like it matches my stuff. Like my friends will love it. You know what I mean? And it's for me, like I really, when I was thinking about alcohol-free products, like I was like, why do people like alcohol? You know, like why the fuck do people like alcohol? And like, I thought about women and wine. And it was like, women love talking about wine. You know what I mean? You get a nice bottle. It's like, you talk about where it was bottled, like what's in it. There's a special way to drink it. And so I realized that if I wanted to get people involved in alcohol-free products, I had to get them obsessed with them. And so I had to find ingredients that were really interesting or that would give you certain feelings. And I had to find really interesting ways that they were brewed so that like, people would like, when they had them with their friends, they could be like, oh, look at this thing I have. And there's only like, I'm the only vendor in Vancouver who has these products, right? So when people have them, they're like, they had to get them from me. And like, and so it's like, oh, you must know Kaitie, or like, you know, it's like, it becomes this exclusive thing.
Nice.
And so what happened was we couldn't order all this product to Amazon. And so we ordered all this product to my house. And then we ordered these boxes. We needed boxes to put the product in order to ship them out. We were going to do subscription boxes. And so I ordered, I don't know if you can see them, but there's a pile of 575 flattened boxes there.
Wow, yeah.
And then like a shit ton of boxes of product over there. But so essentially we ordered all this product to my house. I boxed them all up. It was exciting. And then we were like, how do we mail them? Like without it being $1 million because it's so heavy. You know what I mean?
Correct.
And then all this stuff happened with my business partner. And so I had to be like, okay, I need to change how my company runs. I need to think about like what I'm actually capable of as a solo person now that it's just me again.
Right.
I need to not be upset that it's changing and just ebb and flow with it. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So I started talking to my following and just being like, what sort of things, like I like secretly mentor a lot of people. Like a lot of people call me in the middle of the night when they're fucked up. A lot of people reach out to me. Like a lot of people are working on their sobriety and no one else knows but me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so a profile that I really love, that's super creative, that I've admired for a long time. She actually brought up like coaching and stuff to me. And I was like, you think people would pay me for that? And she was like, yeah, like you do this for me for free. And I definitely think so. And like, that was like the spark I needed to be like, oh, maybe I could do that. And it was something like I've always wanted to do, but I've been too scared to. But so, yeah, anyways.
So you're coaching now. That's exciting. I think you'll be great.
Yeah, I'm excited. But it's interesting too, because I've had some like imposter syndrome. So I was like meditating on that, and that this new like Gabby Bernstein course came up. And it was way out of my price range, like 2,000 American dollars. And for a Canadian girl in a pandemic, it's like, that ain't happening. Yeah. But it kept popping up. And I don't know why. I just felt like I should reach out. And so I reached out and I told them about my story and about my company. And they ended up like helping me with it essentially. And so now I'm in this program that I didn't even realize is based around sobriety and coaching programs. And like the universe just like helped me find it, you know? Right. So yeah, it's been cool and interesting and a lot of work, but honestly so rewarding.
And this is starting to align with more of what your new passion is looking like. It's important to be able to acknowledge your growth. And when you outgrow one thing and you're growing into another, I love it. Is that shirt you're wearing is awesome. Is that yours?
This one, no, not this one. This one's my partner. But
that's hot.
Yeah, I'll show you these pants. This is my friend's company, Gazzy. She makes all of the fun clothes I wear. But
nice.
She makes men's clothes too. But honestly, like I swear, if you wear her stuff, you cannot frown. It's impossible. Like you smile all the time.
I love that. And you know, one thing I want to say in closing that came to my mind with you in particular, and I could see a really cool movie about you. Like you're a star. I see your star quality and your story from the beginning to the end is what you know a film could be about. Something that's endearing, how you struggle, even from being a young little girl trying to rescue your siblings and being creative and trying to figure out how to get them to a safe place and being smarter than the authorities and having all of this stuff. I just, you know, you're a star, and I'm so proud of you and everything that you're doing, and I'm happy. And I hope you could consider me a friend in New York all the time. New York loves you. You always have family here, and anything you ever need. And I just keep up the good work. I was gonna say, was before Sober is Dope, I was when I first got sober, I got diagnosed with pre-diabetes. So I had to change my whole health. Because you know, you get sober, you start eating crazy. I was eating everything.
Oh yeah.
Milkshakes, sugar donuts, milkshakes, cigarettes. I was just crazy. I was so, but that's when I started a company called, my main company is called Monk Fruit Energy. And I was trying to create an energy drink that was low glycemic, that would help, you know, people. And that's when I got into the keto wellness and the ketogenic diet. So I was right where you're at too, like in the beginning. And then I doubled down because I realized that venture, I kind of outgrew that. And then I just kind of settled in on Sober is Dope and wanted to streamline the message. So I could relate to your story in that way, but I'm definitely going to revisit Monk Fruit Energy as a creative, low glycemic drink.
I think that's a smart idea. Like I tried to digress, sorry to digress one more time, but like I did try to make a product on my own, and I tried to make an alcohol-free scotch because there wasn't one. And I was on a radio station, and a guy who owned a brewery heard me talking about this. And so he was like, why don't you come down to my brewery? There's a gin still that I don't use. I'll teach you how to use it. You can make your own product. So I went down to this brewery. He taught me how to use this still. I started making this alcohol-free scotch, and I named it Hopscotch.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we got like the color right, and we got the smell right. And then I ended up moving provinces. And so that journey kind of ended, but it is possible. And I know how to do it.
Hey, you got things. Keep that.
Yeah,
word, right? Keep that in the back pocket. So look, what's in the future? What's in store now? Can you tell us before we go, what's Club Sofa?
Yeah, so for me, like Sober Saturdayz is amazing, and I love holding Sober Saturdayz events for sober people. But the other thing that I realized too is like a lot of my friends, even though they want to be sober, they're not like super stoked to go and hang out with a bunch of sober people. You know what I mean? Like they want to hang out with each other and all the other people they're hanging out with. They just want to be sober while they're doing it. And so I was having this issue of not being able to get my friends to come to my events, and I didn't really understand why. And then the other thing too was like I was having this like sort of block because I felt like I was curating sober, like strictly sober events, and that wasn't like the type of event I wanted to go to either. And so I had to have this moment where I was like, okay, yes, I am sober. I am known as the sober profile. Everyone knows me as being sober, but I'm not just sober. I'm also, you know, like I want to model, I want to dance, I want to do fashion, I want to create earrings, you know, like I want to do all these other things too. And I don't just want to put myself in a box. And so at first I started to try and like advertise Club Sofa on Sober Saturdayz as like a virtual streaming platform that you can go to online at any point. It's really awesome. But my sober community wasn't super stoked about it. It wasn't revolving around sober stuff. It was revolving around DJs. It was revolving around dancing and performances. It was revolving around harm reduction. You know what I mean? Right. So I got a lot of like pushback from people being like, well, you're not sober if you like to party that much. And I'm like, dude, I love to dance. Like, you're not going to convince me otherwise. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to keep going to festivals. I'm going to keep going to events. And so I created this subsection of myself, essentially, which is a creative project that I work with other sober curious people. And so essentially what it is it's a virtual platform. So Twitch is like, you can create your own TV show or like game show, essentially. Okay. So what it is like, my partner's a DJ. I've started DJing now that I've become sober. This is our little DJ equipment.
That's really what's up. All right.
But yeah, so pretty much what happens is like, I get a group of people together. I get performers, we get DJs, we get, models, we get stylists, we get makeup artists, and we all go down to essentially this big warehouse bar, this like underground bar that I found before COVID, and I rent out the space and we create like a virtual event. So essentially you can like log on to Twitch, which is like where you would watch the show, and then you would also log on to Zoom, which is like behind the scenes, and you get to be involved and everyone gets to dress up. So it's like a virtual party, essentially. So you get to like listen to music and like whatever we're doing, but you also get to hang out with other people online. And so we hold like 2 big events twice a month. And then I also do like living room sets. So like I'll just be like in my house playing, and you get to like talk to me, and like the more you watch, the more points you gain. And like with your points, you can buy things, and it's really silly. Like for like 50 points, you can like make me put on a wig, or like for like 100 points, you can request a song, or just like weird things like that. And it's just like a really fun way to be interactive. Yeah. And like, yeah, it's just cool to get other creatives together. And like my big thing was like, I don't want to just like, it's like, I don't just want to tell people to get sober. Like my big thing is like, okay, now you're sober. Now what the fuck? And it's like, I find so much healing in being creative, because as a child, I didn't have that opportunity whatsoever. And as a drinking adult, I didn't have the confidence or the understanding of how to be creative. And so it wasn't until I quit drinking that I was like, oh, now I have all this time and energy, and I guess I'll just try and make something.
Right, you're so creative. I love it. I love it. Oh, those earrings are beautiful also.
Yeah, I made them.
There we go. That's awesome. Right? You have a site where we go. I'll put up the link in the show notes. Those are beautiful. Can you tell us before we go about Everybody Glows? Everybody Glows.
Yes. So I love Everybody Glows. I'm excited that COVID happened because I got to experience Everybody Glows. So Everybody Glows is an 80s aerobics workout class that happens in Portland, Oregon. And I was obsessed with this class and this woman's energy, Frankie. She's so exciting. But her classes weren't online before because she had a studio in Portland. But then when COVID hit, she started putting all of her stuff online. And for me, one of the biggest things about being able to go out and socialize as a sober person was getting reconnected with my silly side and not feeling awkward for saying or doing silly things. And so for my sober profile, it's like, it's really important to exercise and to move your body and whatnot. But for me, it's like, I really want people to like get into this silly aspect so we can be silly together. So like you get to dress up in 80s clothes every single event. Like she does themed 90s ones. She does like all sorts of different ones. And then it's like 80s music, and it's 80s aerobics, and it's amazing. And you can't help but feel good after. And it's like so silly because you're doing 80s aerobics, but it's just like, it was like exercise that I wanted to do, you know, and I wanted to see my friends dress up, and it was like, we're all at home doing nothing anyways. Like, let's do 80s aerobics.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. So you're using all of your resources to bring beautiful experiences to the world and enhance people's lives for the positive. You transcended the trauma of your past. You're not, you went from the being a victim to being victorious, right? You shifted the victim mindset into empowerment. You took your power back. You're in the process of always doing it. I'm so happy for you. I love your beautiful dogs. They're so cute. They're cute, right? So, Kaitie, you inspire me every day. Before we go, any message to young women out there who may be currently in an abusive situation? Anyone that's to the foster community? Anyone that's struggling? Can you give us some closing, inspirational words for anyone out there that may be struggling?
Yeah, just like don't give up on yourself. Don't let people's words tell you that you can't do something. And if you find that you're stuck in a situation that you're incapable of getting yourself out of right now, visualize your way out of it. Like visualize who you want to be, visualize the things you'll do, visualize the values that you have, and like what you're learning right now may not be what you like, but it's teaching you what not to do when you get out of that situation. So just be brave and persevere.
Persevere. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it from the one and only Kaitie Degen herself of Sober Saturdayz. She is a true star, a true bright light, and I think Kaitie's going to go real far. And look, this lady's a star, so look out for her. You're listening to the Sober as Dope podcast. Go in peace. I love you all, and I'll catch you guys on the other side. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.